My name is Larry Glenn Proctor. I was born in Charleston, West Virginia on January the 8th, 1941. It was in the summer of 1964 I got a call from my high school and college football coach, Mr. Jess Lilly. It was an evening and I was coaching a swim team at South Hills Country Club in Charleston, West Virginia. It was an urgent call. He had received a call from a Russ Shepard, and Russ Shepard was coaching here at the time, and they had just had a resignation from Mr. Jim Jay, the football coach here at that time, and asked me if I might be interested in looking into the job. This was, I would say, probably the early part of July, I would guess. Russ Shepard and I, of course, had been roommates on the baseball team at Glenville State College, where we attended college together. So at the time, I was only making $3,000 at the position that I had in Pocahontas County in West Virginia. And so he said, well, I think that we can offer you more money than that. So with that, my wife, Sarah Lee, and I decided to drive over and talk to some people about the job, and so we did. And Russ Shepard and his wife, Joy, lived up here on Stonewall Street at the time, and we spent the weekend there with them. And he took me down to meet Mr. Stanley Dellinger, who was my first principal, who lived down on Orchard Street. And I'll never forget that first meeting with Mr. Dellinger, because he was in his backyard working in his garden, and he was growing eggplant. And it was kind of interesting because I had never seen eggplant before in my life. And he, of course, was in his overalls, and he looked like everything but a high school principal. But he's the first gentleman that I met. And then he proceeded to take me to the Massanutten Bank. And there was a very influential man who, I don't know that he was, I guess he was probably the president of the bank at the time, by the name of Ray Reynolds. And he was a very influential citizen and had a keen interest in the high school athletic program, or at least in the eyes of Mr. Shepard he did. And so he thought that it was important that I go by and get a good endorsement from Mr. Reynolds. So we proceeded to go to the Massanutten Bank, and of course, made all of those contacts in there with all the appropriate personnel. Mr. Bill Cron was there at the time, and I remember meeting Bill on that day. And from there, we went to Woodstock, where I was to meet Dr. W.W. Robinson, who was the superintendent at the time. And this was a weekend, of course, and so no one was in schools. It was a Saturday, and Dr. Robinson was at home. Lived on his house was located there on Court Street, right down below the bank there. I don't know the name of the street address, but it was right across from the church. We sat on the front porch, and he interviewed me there, and offered me the job really that day. And so I said, well, we would talk about it, and then we would get back, and then so we talked about it, and of course the salary was $4,350, and so that was a big jump from $3,000. So obviously my wife and I talked about it, and we went back later that day and talked to him, or called him and told him that I would take the position. and he said, well, I will prepare the contract and mail it to you. And he got my address where I was spending the summer, and I signed the contract, and the rest is history.
That's great.